Hi, everyone. This is Rosemary Coates in Silicon Valley. I'm your host for this edition of the Frictionless Supply Chain Podcast. I'm the executive director of the Reshoring Institute, where we help companies bring back or expand their manufacturing in America. And I'm also a contributing writer to Supply Chain Management Review. Today, I'm very excited to welcome Sarah Rich, and she is the Vice President of Operations and Customer Success at Supplyframe. And I'm going to let her tell you a little bit more about her company and the services that they're providing, which I think you'll find is really quite interesting. So let's get started. Welcome, Sarah.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Rosemary. Nice to be here.
Yeah. So, we love hearing about successful women in supply chain management. And a
Absolutely.
lot of us got into this field quite by accident.
Mhm.
And so I always like to hear the story of how other women got into supply chain management. I mean, most of us didn't have the intention when we were little girls to
No,
become a supply chain professional.
not necessarily. A little bit of a leap from the Broadway star that I thought I would be when I was younger. So yeah, somehow I made my way into operations, supply chain, customer success. So I'm like you, I had the same type of a thing. So our company actually supports supply chain. So we are actually a software provider, solution provider for companies in the electronics and high tech manufacturing industries. And so I've always been in the industry of supporting and helping companies with their supply chain evolution, optimization, those types of things. And so how my journey started was within the industry itself. And again, that in and of itself was a little bit of an accident. I started answering phones for a day at a major distributor and found out that, hey, there's some job opportunities here, and made my way through marketing and on into customer support is how I started, and got into the solution side of the business, the software side of the business pretty early. I met a guy that actually became the founder of Supplyframe back when I was working for Avnet, one of the largest electronics distributors in the world, and was working on some supply chain initiatives that he was a part of, where it was bringing to life, kind of this next generation cloud-based, I didn't even call it cloud-based, it was hosted software back then, of how we can actually really kind of move the industry forward in a way that is going to be meaningful, more connected, more instant, more transparent, those types of things. But doing that back around the dot-com era, back in the late 90s, early 2000s, was a little bit early. And so, how I kind of got into this was really more on that change management, customer support, customer service, because we all know this is hard. We all know that moving from, kind of one chapter to the next, and at a pace that technology brings, can be very challenging for customers and companies that they do business with. And so my world has always been in that, kind of support role, really kind of leading success initiatives, strategies on how do you actually move from A to B? How do you bring your entire supply chain along with you in a way that has this kind of additive effect where, as we always have that saying, as the tide rises, if all boats will rise as the tide goes up. And so therefore we have to be mindful. It's not just necessarily the companies you're working with, but the entire supply chain. So, that's really how I got into it, was a little bit of just, hey, I happen to be here, and really saw how this actually is playing out in the world. We know there's no shortage of technology. There's no shortage of the need for electronics and components, anything with a circuit board, anything with the word smart in it. All of that is my industry and what my customers are working on bringing to light every day. And it's becoming more and more of who we are, right? You think about how these types of products actually impact your world every day of what you see. It's all around us at an industrial level, in manufacturing, in all the things that we do. And it was funny too, because I've been in this job right from the beginning. I started in 2003 when the company started. I was actually employee number 3. And back then, nobody knew what a supply chain was. I talked to my family, my friends about, oh, I'm in supply chain doing software to connect, these large scale, strategies. And everyone's like, Sarah does something with computers. I don't know. Fast forward to the pandemic, we all know what a supply chain
Yeah.
is. So that's been kind of an interesting ride to see how we got from where we were to where we are now. And now it's a household name. So it's been really, really interesting to see how it's changed over the past couple of decades.
Yeah, I always tell people when I started out in supply chain management, people would ask me like at a cocktail party or something, what do you
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
for a living? And I would say, oh, I'm in supply chain management. And, their eyes would sort of glaze over like,
Yeah.
oh, that's nice,
Yeah, exactly. 100%. I used to just say, it's software. That's all you need to know. I do software. That's good enough. And oh, okay, sounds cool. That's about what people could take. But we've all been impacted by it now, right?
Yeah,
We all
I mean,
understand.
once the pandemic hit, then
Yep.
everybody knew they couldn't get toilet paper,
Right. Right.
wipes, disinfectant wipes, and all of that stuff that they didn't ever think about. And now all of a sudden, everybody knows and talks about supply chain, right?
Yes,
So yeah,
absolutely.
quite interesting. So tell us about Supplyframe because I know it's a bit of a different company, and uh, in supply chain management, we often think about software that supports the functional side of supply chain. Moving shipments along or tracing shipments, that sort of thing. But what you do is different. So
Yeah.
give us kind of an overview so we understand what Supplyframe does for your
Sure.
customers.
Yeah, absolutely. So the way we like to think of it is supply frame is really kind of a strategy around the entire ecosystem. So if you think about when a product comes to market, right? Take your iPhone or take, maybe the infotainment system in your car. These advances that we've had over the last few decades take some engineer at some point with an idea in their head of how they can build out something that takes advantage of technology for some kind of purpose. So if we think about that process from a design perspective where the engineer is thinking about ways they can bring this idea to life all the way on through to where they're actually purchasing the materials to actually build that idea and actually get it out into manufacturing and large scale production, Supplyframe has solutions that help all along the way. We think of it as design to source, right? So when we design the product all the way on through to when it's being sourced and out there in the world being manufactured. But the key point that Supplyframe brings is design to source intelligence, right? You'll hear us refer to that as DSI pretty frequently. So the idea being that, sure, like you said, traditional software does a lot of the automation and some of the, kind of the flow through the workflows as far as how you actually manage a supply chain. But oftentimes what we found was it was limited to what was in your four walls, right? You could look at history, you could look at, information that you're getting from maybe some of your partners, but there wasn't really an easy way to have a more global view of what's going on in the market, a holistic view that really infuses this outside in approach to bring intelligence that helps with those decision points and those things that really come to life when you talk about long-term supply chain and kind of resiliency. We hear about that word of the supply chains being able to be resilient as far as longevity is concerned. So how we do this is when you talk about those design engineers, when they're out there researching products, we have a network of sites. Supplyframe has a network of sites that either we own or partner with that engineers use in order to be able to research designs. So there's sites that have data sheets, design resources, 3D models, things that they use in order to be able to figure out, all right, when I'm building this next new cool iPhone, for example, what are some of the things that I'm going to use in order to make this thing come to life? There's a lot of research that goes into that and a lot of, kind of pulling information down, trying out different things, researching, et cetera. They also need to go out and say, okay, how expensive is it going to be if I pick some of these parts? And we have sites that also allow for distributors, manufacturers to share with these engineers, these procurement folks, where can you buy some of these products? How much are they going to cost? How available is the inventory? Those types of things, lead time, et cetera. That all gives a lot of information when an engineer and when a company is thinking about bringing a product to life for large scale production. Now, as a result of all of this, because these sites are within our network, we get a lot of signals that happen. We can see what engineers are researching. We can see what parts are being researched and searched on. And we can see, where we're starting to have volatility as far as availability, where pricing trends may be going up or down, and things that really kind of come to life not necessarily as you're designing, but certainly down the road when you're trying to build, millions and millions of whatever this product may be. And so what we try to do is infuse that information. We take all of that, what we call data exhaust from all these things that are happening around the world, and create it into insights that we then overlay into software solutions that get used for the management of supply chain. And the idea is, first of all, let's get connected. We want to make sure that the people that are designing the products are connected to the people that need to make sure that they can source and support the products. And then that intelligence layer helps for making decisions along the way, helping to identify where you might have risk, helping to identify where potentially alternates or other types of solutions are available, and to really kind of infuse that together to have a more holistic view for the company as a whole. We see a lot of de-risking that happens, a lot of kind of that long-term, large-scale production, forecasting, future-proofing, those types of things. Those are the activities that our customers are looking for.
So that's quite a bit of functionality, and I guess I'm thinking of it in terms of a sequence. So an engineer has some bright idea, as you said. Maybe they're gonna develop some kind of newfangled phone, for example. They would use the tools in the software first to help with design. Is that right? And then also look out into the marketplace where they might be able to get parts and pricing that and
Yeah. They
yeah.
typically will have their own CAD model type of library and software development, right? So tools that we see out there and today with engineers are
So if in case anybody doesn't know, CAD, to explain what CAD is, CAD CAM, right?
yeah, right. So these are when you think about the components that go into a circuit board, right? So every single electronic product has a circuit board that has, some kind of processor, a chip, memory, the connectors, the transistors that all connect to make this thing go. That it takes a model to actually figure out how are we going to build this, put these things together, and make them work together. These models that they have, they use software that allows them to kind of place them on a virtual board and
Right.
see how they work together. So software products like Teamcenter from our parent company Siemens is one that where companies will come in and use that to manage what's called a bill of materials. These are the products that need to go into, or the components that go into a given design, and to be able to figure out what's the most cost-effective, space-efficient, sustainable way of building that out. They do that in a virtual environment such that when they go to actually build this, or they actually hire a company to build this, it's all kind of tested out in that virtual world. So
So
companies,
so CAD CAM is computer aided design,
right?
right?
Yep, exactly.
Computer aided manufacturing. Yeah, CAD
Yes,
CAM.
yep,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
And so what we do is we partner up with these companies in order to help take bills of materials, those designs, actually integrate it into Supplyframe where they can actually start to get intelligence about it. So they can take it, have it infused into the Supplyframe environment where they can see where they might have risk, as I talked about, where possibly some of these components they're using are becoming end of life. They can look at things like price and availability. Am I going to be able to buy these things when it goes out to market? They look at lead times. How long is it going to take me to actually, wait until these components become
So
available?
without that assistance, without a supply chain assistance, all this would be done by hand essentially.
It'd
So
be done
going
by
out and calling suppliers, getting quotes through the purchasing department or some other way. In this case, you're a go-to spot for that
absolutely.
intelligence and that information.
Absolutely. So it's definitely more of an efficiency play. So all of this information is available in some form or fashion, but it's all over the web. It's from lots of different sources, suppliers, et cetera. Like you said, a lot of times you're kind of doing it in an Excel spreadsheet, you're making phone calls, et cetera, not very efficient. And oftentimes the engineering department throws it over the fence to a different department to figure out. And there's a lot of back and forth that happens. And so our goal is to kind of bring all that together into a more connected environment where you can have access to that information, in real time. We have connections to all these different sources, distribution, manufacturers, the customers themselves bring data that they have in-house, that type of thing, along with this intelligence layer that we are providing that's happening out in the market,
So,
all in one.
so yeah, so a supplier of components would upload their information into your system or make it available through some kind of hosted environment. Is that right? And then engineers that are using it can go and find that data or find that information.
That's correct. We have some that is more public available information. So for those that maybe have heard of findships.com, it's the largest site out there for distributors and manufacturers to post, their product stock, inventory, pricing, availability, those types of things. We infuse that into the platform. The customer themselves also can have their own pre-negotiated information that maybe they have contracts with different suppliers that can be pulled in, and they have portals where they can actually get quotes very quickly or even in real time with their supply chain. All of that information can come in, via the platform as well. So a lot of different ways you can get the data inside the system.
So potentially you may be interfacing with ERP systems on the customer side as well as
Absolutely.
external provided information. So
Correct.
you had mentioned risk before. How do you get that information about risk, or how do you assess that? I mean,
Yeah,
that seems like a really huge task
it
to
is.
go out into the world and determine what's risky in terms of the supplier and what isn't.
Yeah. Well, the good news is the way we've kind of tackled this is not just our version of this. What we have done is we've either partnered with companies that provide this. So there are
Right.
third-party data providers that we actually work with directly. We also have the ability to infuse whatever information the customer has as well. Some of this is going to be very, let's call it tactical information. So, where is that product as far as its stage is concerned? How far in the future is the manufacturer predicting that this component will be end of life? We talked about the availability and the pricing trends. That also can be a little bit of a risk factor. And we're also seeing where companies are really looking at more sustainability factors, country of origin, some of the, kind of the raw materials that go into these products. We are gathering that information either through partnerships, through our own sources, as well as the customers. But what Supplyframe has done is built a risk index that you can customize for whatever you as the company holds important. And that can be, different types of factors and different weighting depending on the type of product, depending on, where it's being manufactured. You can have these different risk factors that you build in that can apply to any given project to help identify where you might have risk. And we've seen our customers over and over use this for instant information that helps them drive their supply chain.
Yeah, that's really interesting because I think a lot of people experience problems in their supply chain because they're interfacing with a dozen different places or asking for information from, a dozen different companies or in trying to put that all together, and there's no place to do that.
Right.
And there's no
Yeah.
internally, if all you have is an ERP system, you don't necessarily have a repository or a way of using that information going forward.
Yeah.
So are you using AI as part of that solution?
We are. So what we've done is not only do we give you the ability to look at this as far as kind of an aggregated data view, but we also have predictive analytics. So we over the pandemic, as a matter of fact, as we were talking about that earlier, it was really interesting as we were starting to build out some of these solutions and look at the data that we had and try to figure out how to make sense of all of this. Very quickly, we saw obvious patterns that were coming up that essentially kind of forecasted what was about to happen in the world that we were living in, particularly in automotive. We saw some of these kind of typical supply chain factors almost as they were about to occur, and we realized the value of that data and what we could bring to life. And so there is this predictive analytics that we overlay. We also use artificial intelligence to figure out, how is this information being used within the platforms among our customers to be able to help them with some of the things that they'll need to know in a way that's very digestible. So any given person that's using this, whatever their responsibilities are, they know how to interface with the data so that it can help them with the decisions that they make every day. And it's something that's ongoing. It's constantly learning. So absolutely, that's how we are figuring out how do we make sense of all of this data. There's no shortage of data. Any company that you work with is going to say, hey, we have data up to here. It's what can you do with it? How can you use it to make you smarter decisions and to make sure that companies are using it in a way that aligns to strategy.
So what kind of categories of supplier or customers do you have? So I
Sure.
know you work with contract manufacturers.
Yep.
Uh,
You
so
are,
yeah, go
yeah. Contract manufacturers is one. We also work with large scale OEMs. again, anybody that is in the business of bringing products to life that is around electronics, high-tech manufacturing. So we work with OEM customers as they're working through their designs, as they're planning out their supply chain, long-term procurement. And we also work with their EMS providers and partners to help them with how are they going to source all of this and how are they going to bring back information to their customers along these same things that we're talking about with risk and those types of things. A good success
Yeah.
story that I love to talk about is we had a customer that actually was doing safety products for the automotive industry. So they are actually kind of, let's call it a sub OEM of a larger OEM that is
Okay.
out there, kind of figuring out, all right, how are we going to build these products that then will fit into these tier one automotive companies? This customer was able to take a couple of their top level bills of material, run it through Supplyframe, and immediately saw where they might have some risk for some of the things that they were providing for their
Wow.
tier one automotive partner. Not only was it a good, let's call it transactional success story, but it actually created a stronger partnership between those two companies. We actually saw a quote where the automotive companies say, hey, now I understand what you're doing when you build these things out. And it's created this really strong partnership where they can have a much more transparent, open conversation about what's really going on out in the market that helps both companies when it comes to actually bringing these products to life. So those are the things that we think about, not only using the data itself to make greater decisions, how does it actually create stronger supply chains, greater partnerships, more transparency, more visibility, and more working together to combat some of these challenges that are happening all around us all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I think when I started out many, many, many years ago,
Yeah,
it was all about getting shipments off the dock every day. And today's environment, it's very striking to me that it's all about finding the information
yeah,
every day. And really as supply chain management people, we're dealing with essentially information all the time.
yeah,
It's not so much we're pushing the boxes off the dock, but we're trying to figure out what's in those boxes and how is that going to affect the next stage of production or delivery to the customer or some other movement along the supply chain, which
yes.
is all just information. It's not like you're out there, taking a picture of the box or
Right,
looking at
right.
it. It's the information about the box, right?
It is. It is. And there's so many factors that are coming into play when you think about how do you plan for all of this, right? It used to be about, just forecasting, okay, availability. Am I going to be able to buy these things and get them out the door? But there's so many more factors at play now. We were talking earlier about, some of the things that can affect it with geopolitical things that are happening. Tariffs is a word that everybody knows now in the
Yeah.
household. You think about, even just, large scale events that are happening around the world. Companies are really a little bit of a scramble trying to figure out how do we get in front of all of this. And if you don't have tools, data, intelligence, partnerships that help you figure that out, it's very, very difficult. So,
I mean, I think, it's striking to me that because we're in this tariff chaos, I guess I would say,
right.
it's really, it's really striking in how a company might manage their global sourcing given the unstable environment in the US.
Yes.
So if they don't know from day to day what the tariff is, or if they place an order today for a shipment that's going to be delivered in 6 or 8 weeks, how
Mhm.
do they predict, what the tariff rate is going to be, or if there's a tariff,
Yeah,
or those kind of this kind of situation is something that we've never seen before, even during the pandemic.
right.
It's very disturbing, I think,
Yeah.
because it's so unpredictable and it's very, very risky these
Yes.
days. And how companies are handling that is fascinating. Are they using software? Are they trying their best? Are they, trying to bring manufacturing or sourcing back to the U.S.? Or these are really strategic decisions based no longer just on cost
Yes.
but on all kinds of variables that are out there, and managing those variables becomes very difficult.
It is. And that's why, when we think about some of the things that you want your employees at your company doing, when you talk about supply chain professionals, You don't making phone calls and trying to track down
Right.
data and all that stuff. That should all be off the plate and even handled to a certain level by the platform itself. We've invested heavily in agentic AI, where you can actually train software to be able to do some of the day-to-day tasks that you need for collecting information or.
I want to stop there for a minute because I don't think it's very clear to people the difference between regular AI, or, Chat GPT and agentic AI.
Yeah,
Can
okay.
you can you describe that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, with agentic AI, I always think about little agents, right? Little people, so to speak, that are helping to find information and to carry out tasks based on that information that you find out on the web or that you find out, within a given data set. And so an example might be, on a day-to-day level. So if I'm somebody that is looking for plane fares and I want to make sure that I am trying to find the best fare at any given time, knowing that I always go home to Michigan where I'm from, you can train an agent to say, here are the things that I typically like to do. I like to fly on these days. I like to not spend any more than X dollars. I don't want a layover that's longer than a couple of hours. I want to fly into the airport that's closest to where I grew up. Those types of things. You can train an agent to look for that information for you and bring you back when those factors all come together and what are the best choices, and alert you when you have sales that are going on or something's available. That would be a use case of where an agent can actually do work on your behalf in your
Yeah.
personal life, for
And
example.
they're sort of making a decision for you in terms of what you like and what you don't like, and
Yeah,
eliminating some pieces that you would otherwise have researched and set aside and all that. You don't have to do
yeah.
that all that work anymore.
Yeah, it's almost like a little personal assistant. So you can think about that in the work context, go out there and research these parts for me. Show me when these things are going to potentially have low inventory, not going to be available. Let me know if lead time is kind of changing one way or the other. And if it does, I want you to do these steps. I want you to take these decisions or make these actions happening. Because when you have tools and platforms that help you do this, that gives you the ability and more brain power, so to speak, to think about some of these larger scale strategies that you just brought up, where we don't have playbooks like for the things that are happening today. There's no playbook for tariffs kind of up and down and the things that we've been experiencing. That takes
Yeah, that's
brain
true.
power. Yeah. So that's what you want your team focusing on, less on the things that kind of make all the engine go, so to speak.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. Really interesting assistance out there to
Yeah.
help companies sort of navigate through what's happening in the marketplace today. It's also so striking that we've come so far. I mean, since the beginning of my career, transportation management, logistics. We didn't call it supply chain until the 90s.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
In fact, I remember the day I first heard that term. I was a HP employee, and we were at a big regional meeting, and we had a consultant come in and speak, and he had a chain, an actual chain with him, and
Uh-huh.
he talked about supply chain and this concept where, we were all blown away at how he was thinking about a chain of events instead of our individual fiefdoms, you know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it was quite exciting. But to think about where we've come from then, way back then, to today's environment, requires not only a lot more sophisticated tools, but a different kind of education and a different way of thinking about supply chain today than supply chain professionals did or needed, 25, 30 years ago. So the
Absolutely.
education is different, the sophistication of supply chain management professionals, the kind of training, education, and tools, and the way of thinking strategically has all really changed as well.
It has. You talked about that information, having all this information available to you and how that can be daunting, but it also can be your friend, right? As soon as we say, the world is getting faster and things are going quicker and technology and, so many more challenges coming our way, you also have so many more communities that you can get connected with and other like-minded professionals. And it isn't, kind of this the industries where we used to kind of hide our secrets and how we did it. Companies are much more willing to kind of collaborate and figure out how are we going to tackle these challenges together. This transparency, this connection is really more pervasive than it's ever been. And to me, that's opportunity for both the individual as well as companies themselves, because that's how we're going to solve all this. It's not with our own individual thinking. It's going to be a
Yeah,
collective.
a
And how do we do
collaborative.
it together? Yep.
Yeah. So, so thinking about Supplyframe, then, what's
Mhm.
the future? What's the direction that you're going to be able to help your customers next year or next 10 years?
Yeah. So, obviously advances in technology will continue to bring out software solutions, tools, features, all that kind of good stuff that help with this movement that we've started as far as how you think about supply chain and this shift left mentality of thinking further upstream within the engineering on down through into procurement and supply chain. We also, as I mentioned, we were acquired by Siemens in 2021, and Siemens, specifically within the digital software group, has done tremendous work on
Yeah.
building digital twins, digital threads that help companies to create a virtual counterpart to a process, a product, a manufacturing site that helps with the ability to make adjustments, make changes and optimization in a virtual world, test it out, bring things to life quicker that then they can employ in the physical world. Supplyframe fits right into that. So we're going to be very much weaving into the digital threads of how do we bring intelligence into some of those processes that are being built, those digital threads. And you can think about a company as big as Siemens. Obviously, the world is our oyster here because there's so many companies doing such cool things out there. If we think about the ability to partner in ways that help this technology move forward, it's really, really exciting. So you'll see a lot more coming from us with Siemens as our parent company and our partner as well, that are really going to help with the manufacturing world in particular.
That's terrific. It's really nice to have a big brother like that that can help
Yeah,
you
yeah.
through that development process. So, Sarah, you've had a very successful career, obviously.
Thank you. Yeah.
What advice can you give women and men as they develop their own careers in supply chain management?
Sure. I mean, honestly, it goes without saying that learning is key, right? You have to be very intentional, very thoughtful about your own development. And that's both within your industry itself and learning and staying ahead of, the headlines and trends that are going on. Good news is we're in the world of technology or the age of technology where there's a lot of information available, but it also talks about, personal development as well. Be the first to raise your hand, be the one that actually, kind of leans in to learn more, stay curious, really ask questions of your colleagues. People have been supply chain professionals for many years. Ask your customers, what keeps them up at night, because all of that is going to help you to really kind of have a little bit more of an empathetic knowledge base that you can take for your own to be able to figure out how can you make a difference within your supply chain and for your partners. Those are some of the biggest things that I think about. Learn about AI, partner with some of these communities that are out there to learn, make connections, find a mentor group that you can help, that you can bring challenges that you're faced with. Have your little team that you can go to that knows what you're up against every day, and bounce ideas off of. It takes kind of a
Okay.
proactive approach to do all of that. But the good news is there's lots of folks out there that are willing to help, lots of communities that you can find online, and certainly companies out there like Supplyframe, like Siemens, that are leaning into really helping the market as a whole. So make sure that you take advantage of anywhere that you can get connected.
Very good advice. Thank you.
You bet.
So thank you so much for joining us today, Sarah. It was really interesting to talk to you and to learn more about supply chain and Supplyframe, your
Yep.
company. Yeah. Uh,
Yep.
can you please give us your contact information if anyone wants to get in touch or learn more about Supplyframe?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So supplyframe.com is where we're at, and you can always get a hold of me, Sarah Rich. I'm on LinkedIn, as well as srich at Supplyframe. Feel free to drop me a line. Would love to connect with anybody and talk more.
Terrific. Thank you.
Yeah,
And you
thanks for having me.
and you can listen to more frictionless supply chain podcasts posted on Supply Chain Management Review's landing page, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And you can reach me, Rosemary Coates, at rcoates at reshoringinstitute.org. And visit our website, www.reshoringinstitute.org, where we publish all of our research on manufacturing in North America. Thank you, everyone, and have a very great day.
Thanks.